What is up, guys? Welcome in here, Kurt Magoo Sports. This is going to be kind of, a video on the 15-minute side. This is a topic that obviously could go on a very long while. Have recorded, a bunch of videos tonight, talking about coaching hires, in the NFL. The Giants, Mike Kafka. Also, Jesse Minter going to the University of Michigan as a defensive coordinator. But what I'm going to do here, and this is a great idea, brought to you by one of my best friends. I'll give him a plug. He's a pretty damn famous YouTuber in his own right, and he does tremendous work at Jet Central. So, I was texting him about this, and he's a cool friend because we're able to talk football all the time. Great friend, and you're able to talk football. So, anyway, so it's ranking the head coaches in the National Football League, ranking the hires from best to worst. It's ranking and analyzing the hires. So let's analyze exactly where we are, where each franchise kind of is in terms of the hiring process, in terms of all of these coaches that were hired. Let's start out with the worst team in the league in Jacksonville, the team that finished the worst. They end up hiring Doug Peterson. Now, Rick Spielman comes in. There from Minnesota, so you do get some experience, but you still have Trent Baalke that, again, didn't do well with Chip Kelly, and a guy that really fizzled out with Jim Harbaugh, had a lot of fights, and then, of course, with Urban Meyer, it was a disaster with Trent Baalke. So, again, Byron Leftwich wasn't hired because of that. Doug Peterson, what does he do well? Doug Peterson, very happy-go-lucky guy. Going to be aggressive in terms of going for it on fourth down. I think he was ahead of analytics when he coached the Philadelphia Eagles. That was the best part about the way he coached. Super aggressive. Of course, you remember Philly special, but even during the regular season, if they were on the plus side of the field, he's going for it. He's a guy that will throw it down the field. He's a guy that will call aggressive offense, okay? He did hire Jim Schwartz. He is able to delegate. Now, a criticism of Doug is that you could say in the end he ended up getting in a fight with Howie Roseman and a power struggle with Carson Wentz in that whole operation. All right, but let's look at Doug and where did he fail in Philadelphia. He failed after Frank Reich left. He didn't develop wide receivers, and his play calling was very, very repetitive. So he wasn't able to sustain consistency. And that for Doug, I think that he needs to have a staff of guys that come from the Shanahan tree, the West Coast tree, instead of just having Mike Rowe and all of your buddies in Philadelphia, kind of like Joe Judge has Freddie Kitchens. Doug Peterson needs to have a very diverse offensive staff of ideas. Then he needs to hire a defensive coach with a good pedigree, all right? And then maybe they can get that thing going in Jacksonville. Obviously, developing Lawrence, creating touchdowns, having Chark, trying to accent James Robinson and building that roster. As long as the team competes and plays consistently, he will have a job for the forthcoming years. That ownership is hard to work with. That ownership is very impulsive. So again, like the Cleveland Browns, it's one of the toughest jobs from an ownership perspective. So Peterson, in my honest opinion, is an all right coach. I worry about the diversity of his play calling. That's what I'm most worried about. What I think he does best is his relationship to the players, his aggressiveness on the offensive side of the ball. So, again, and I think that Jacksonville, again, a lot of guys love Trevor Lawrence. I like Trevor Lawrence. I think it's a very tough job because you have expectation with Trevor Lawrence, and I think that Lawrence is a pretty good quarterback, but people are making him out to be like he is an unbelievable quarterback. So for Doug, it's a little bit of pressure. It's not as bad as it could have gotten. It could have been Vic Fangio. It could have been other guys. Byron Leftwich might have been even really young to take this job. You look at Mike McCarfey. He had success in Green Bay. He ended up, really managing, a pretty good turnaround in year 2 in Dallas. So, I look at Doug Peterson, and he has a chance to do it in a small market. I think it's like a C higher because I don't expect them having long-term success because I worry about his creativity on offense. If he gets the staff right, it could be a good second run for Doug Peterson. So Doug only out 1 year, and then he bounces and gets a job. He is a Super Bowl champ, and that year again is huge for Doug Peterson. Very likable coach, though, very likable. Not the worst head coaching hire by any means. Let's go to the Denver Broncos. Let's analyze Nathaniel Hackett. Interesting personality. Let's label these two guys together in this 20-minute video. Nathaniel Hackett's personality, he's like Rob Corddry in Hot Tub Time Machine, even like Rob Corddry in Harold and Kumar Guantanamo Bay. Like the bald guy, really funny, quirky, loud, everything. You do have Clint Kubiak, which is a really good hire. Defensive coordinator-wise, I kind of have to see what they're going to do. Justin Newton is a guy I'm curious to see his interviewing, but again, kind of a bland Green Bay hire. So again, you're sticking a lot with your roots. Which I guess a lot of coaches are trying to do, but you have Drew Locke, which I really like. I like Locke. A lot of people are, down on Drew Locke. I've always been a Drew Locke fan in terms of his talent and in terms of what he can do. Of course, if you get Aaron Rodgers, then you're going to be cooking in Denver. You play in the toughest division in all of sports. So again, I don't know how diverse is his play calling going to be. The biggest challenge for him is consistency. He's a guy that is high wire, high intensity. If the Broncos struggle, this is what, Arthur Smith did well. If the Broncos struggle, this is what Sirianni's going to need to do better if the team struggles. Can you be consistent? You're such a high energy guy. You're so kind of quirky. Are you going to be able to be consistent? All right. And that is going to be the challenge with this coaching hire in Denver. So a big personality. This is either going to be really successful, like pretty out of the box brilliant, or it's not going to work at all. So I'm rating it worse than Doug Peterson. I have my doubts about him. I believe the personality could draw some people off. I didn't love what he did in Jacksonville. It was an odd hire to me at the time. I believe that, again, it was Matt LaFleur pretty much rolling that offense. So I'm very worried about this hire. The next guy is Mike McDaniel. Now, McDaniel can be better because he's a quieter guy than Nathaniel Hackett. Where Nathaniel Hackett is going to be all in your face, it's all about Nathaniel Hackett. Mike McDaniel's kind of in the shadows. So he could be kind of this cooler guy in terms of like letting the culture kind of cook itself. I think this is a guy that players are actually going to really like working for. He seems pretty modest. He seems pretty humble. In terms of his play calling acumen, it could really be brilliant. I'm impressed that he went to Yale. I'm impressed that he's been with Shanahan, and I'm impressed in the running scheme that they develop with Deebo Samuel, that they develop with, Jerick McKinnon, Tevin Coleman. All right. This is a guy that is sober. He's overcome adversity, and I think he's a really brilliant offensive mind, or I'm excited to see what he's going to do with Tua. Now, is Tua a really good quarterback? I, again, like Tua a lot more than a lot of other people do. I think Jalen Waddle's a stud. I think Jasicki's really good. Devontae Parker, that defense, if they're able to retain Josh Boyer, I look at this hire as being a really, really good hire. Of course, with his quirky personality, it could blow up, but I'm getting good feelings about Mike McDaniel. The more that I watch, the more that I see. So again, I think that this is a nice hire for the Miami Dolphins. It was one of the more coveted guys on my list. Kellen Moore, Dan Quinn, DeMeco Ryans, even Raheem Morris, they're guys that I think are pretty damn high on my list that didn't get looked at or hired this cycle. But Mike McDaniel is a very fascinating and interesting candidate. Let's go to a guy in Minnesota that I really like. I like Kevin Oconnell. I like Quincy Metza. This is a team that I would be interested in signing in if I was a free agent. I've loved O'Connell's personality for a really long time. Really cool guy, really chill, going to run the offense. A guy that you look at Zach Taylor, they're very similar. Very easy to work with, fun personalities, very player-friendly personality. complete opposite kind of Jim Harbaugh. Kevin O'Connell is a solid guy. This is one of the safer hires, actually, on my board. He is near the top for me, along with Mike McDaniel. I really like this hire from the Minnesota Vikings. They have a good roster with Jefferson, Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen. Their defense can get better and better. Their general manager is a brilliant guy, kind of like Mike McDaniel, an Ivy League guy, outside the box sort of style. The Wirfs are really going from kind of an older and a staler regime to a very modernized approach with Kevin O'Connell. This dude is a flat-out stud. He was in Washington. He's a great guy. Vikings fans are going to love Kevin O'Connell. So I'm pretty high on KOC. He might even be my favorite one out of this group. The next guy I'm going to say is Canadian Brian Dabil. I like Brian Dabil now because he's shown he's humble. His staff has been impeccable. He's exactly the type of grinder that kind of works in a big city, meaning that he's not like Rex Ryan where he's going to go high and low. You know, he's himself, but again, he's not too big of a personality, and I think that the players are really going to like Dabil. He's humble, he works hard. Mike Kafka's a fantastic hire as an offensive coordinator. Love the hire from Kansas City, a guy a Northwestern guy, very impressive pedigree as a backup quarterback in the NFL, will be a head coach, okay? You have Davis Webb, who will be a future head coach as your veteran quarterback on that coaching and quarterback staff. Shea Tierney from Buffalo. You get the offensive line coach, Bobby Johnson, really good, very interesting. Joe Shane, the GM, is really solid. The problem is Daniel Jones. The problem is that offense and that offensive line. The quarterback and offensive line need to get fixed. But this is a guy I could see being in New York for a while and a guy that the Mariners can finally have stability in. I think he's the number one choice. Then I'm going to go with Kevin O'Connell. So those two are the guys that I'm really high on in this process of being solid coaches that are going to last a while. Mike McDaniel is a risk, but I can see Mike McDaniel having success as well. Playoff success. I know it's a really tough division. Let's talk about Josh McDaniels. I don't really like this hire because I watched the Patriot offense. It's a lot of running the football. It's not too much spread. I want to see more spread rather than a lot of 12 personnel. I know that the Raiders already kind of incorporate the McDaniel system. He does have Dave Ziegler. It is very smart groups of people. McDaniels is really qualified. He's led really good offense with Tom Brady. He's waited his turn for the next opportunity other than Denver. He's considered one of the more smart guys as an offensive coordinator. In theory, it should work. I worry about the temperament. And of course, you're talking about the AFC West where you're going up against Mahomes and you're going up against Justin Herbert. And also the Denver Broncos have a really talented roster. So is McDaniels going to be patient? Is Mark Davis going to be patient? I see this one actually being the most of a train wreck in terms of the style and the fit. Then you look at Matt Eberflus. He's with a guy in Fields that I have concerns about. His offensive coordinator hire, he didn't land Joe Brady. It was a weird offensive coordinator hire. I think they might have hired the Packers quarterback coach or something. So it's a strange hire as an offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. Matt Eberflus, again, seems to be trying too hard in his interviews. Ryan Poles actually seems a little more nervous than I would have expected in these interviews. They're off to a shaky start. Now, will Matt Eberflus prove wrong? The defense could be solid. How is it going to work out with Justin Fields in a very tough job? So a lot of these jobs are tough. Then we go to Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith in Houston. I actually like this hire more than a lot of people. I think Lovie will be decent. It's a very tough place to recruit people to work. Caserio is running this thing. It's another bridge coach, a little bit older. I think that the Texans will improve under Davis Mills and under Nick Caserio. And But unfortunately, how long is Lovey going to do this? Probably about 4 more years. McCown should hopefully be on staff. Pep Hamilton. It could be a really good staff. It's not going to be a disaster. The culture will continue. It could be a really decent hire. I like the direction of Houston. New Orleans, just like Tampa Bay, is pretty much turning into a terrible job because Drew Brees retired, salary cap, star running back, possibly facing legal trouble. It's a really tough job. Dennis Allen takes it over. Dennis Allen did a nice job defensively as a defensive coordinator. He flamed out with the Raiders before, gets another chance. It's just a really, really tough job. I wanted to see Eric Bieniemy get this job because Bieniemy worked at an 8-hour interview. I wanted to see it on that indoor surface. I wanted to see if Jameis Winston would come back with a Bieniemy-led offense. I wanted to see Bieniemy get his chance, and I do hope Bieniemy gets his chance to be a head coach because his acumen and what he's done the last 5 years in Kansas City under Andy Reid, he's the one guy, you look at Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy. He should be the next guy in line from the Reid tree to get a job. He's interviewed a lot of places, so it's unfortunate that he is the guy that is not getting his turn to be a head coach again. Raheem Morris from the Rams staff is going to get hired really soon, I believe. You look at DeMeco Ryans as well from San Francisco, and then Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn. I think that people are sleeping on Dan Quinn. People hate Dan Quinn from, I guess, blowing leads in Atlanta. But the guy, honestly, was a really solid coach. He hired Sarkisian and he hired Kyle Shanahan. Really bright, really good at relating with players, good defensive scheme, and he's adapted his way from a cover 3 guy to playing like a 4-3 blitzing style with Micah Parsons. So I think Quinny can be really great. And then Kellen Moore, I think, would have been my choice as a head coaching candidate. Very intelligent, calls great plays, involves everybody in the run and the pass game, puts up big offensive numbers, very young, very youthful, always willing to adapt, and a guy that has been prepping to be a head coach since he was in elementary school, and one of the smartest players at Boise State and even in the NFL, and a guy that you could tell was going to be a future stud in this business, and he's already proving dividends in Dallas. Again, I think Kellen would have been awesome. Who knows about the future of Mike McCarfey? And again, the hot seat rumors with Jerry Jones and the time management troubles there. But that's kind of how I view these coaching vacancies and how they were filled, and that's how I view each job going along. So we'll see if as it happens. Will I be perfect? Who the heck knows?